Folks, if you think I'm upset because of this whole voting issue, you're absolutely correct. At the end of the day, it's a huge problem. I'm going to get to the White House intruder story in just 1 second. But what African Americans must understand is that when you look at this election, we hold the key in critical races, especially in southern states. Louisiana, North Carolina, and also Arkansas. Those are the 3 states Democrats are targeting. And when you look at the polling numbers, when you look at the data right now, huge black turnout can certainly put those candidates over the top. You can vote Republican or you can vote Democrat. I say, who is standing with you on voter suppression? That's the real issue. I want to go to our panel right now. We continue to see these efforts over and over and over again. Republicans try this crap of, well, we're trying to limit voter fraud. We're trying to save money. You cannot sit here as a Republican and call for the United States to put boots on the ground and to spend money fighting ISIS and ISIL somewhere else in the world, but then you want to give some flimsy excuse as to why we can't spend money to keep polls open in the United States. If there is one thing we should be paying for, and that is allowing people access to the ballot.
Well, the reason for it, obviously, Roland, it's obvious, is the demographics are changing the country. It's not about voting. It's about power. It's about who controls what. It's about power and it's about control. You look at the states, just like you said, the demographics in Florida, Georgia, Arkansas, North Carolina, all these states have had moments with regard to Republicans trying to make it more difficult to vote. There's an obvious reason for that, and the obvious reason, particularly in North Carolina, is to effectively create a situation where minorities have less power and the power structure is what it is today.
And this is about minorities because the fact of the matter is in 2012, for the first time in American history, African Americans voted at a higher rate than anybody else in this country, led by black women. This is a direct attempt in order to cut down on those votes because they're basically banking on, if they're able to reduce the number of black votes by 1 to 3%, that could change the entire election.
And we're not even getting into Latino numbers in Florida and Texas, which they rigged the Texas districts so that Latinos would have less power. So that's the other thing coming up.
Kevin, Michelle.
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
One of the things that I think is interesting, you know, a lot of times you'll hear a lot of Republicans say that they're not as concerned about the Latino vote because some of them can swing conservative or can swing Republican. But what we're really looking at here is a situation where they have recognized, ironically, that we actually do have power in the ballot box, and so they are trying to limit that. So I think we really do have to be very vigilant in making sure that we protect not only our rights, but the rights of future generations and the 6 million people that should have the right to vote that don't have the right to vote because they're convicted felons.
I have a major problem with both parties. You go into, I live in a predominantly black county. It's predominantly Democrat. You show up on election day, you got long lines, polls open late, several voting machines, okay? This is a universal problem. I'm all for a national voting holiday. Put all this money, this is supposed to be done 14 years ago in the aftermath of Florida. Okay, if you look at all these states and predominantly black areas, you have polls, you have 4 or 5 voting machines, but 1,000 to 2,000 people standing outside. That doesn't work.
That's controlled by the state.
That's by design.
But that's what I'm saying. You got these secretaries of states in all these states, okay? Whether it be New York, whether it be North Carolina, whether it be Florida, whether it be Texas, we always hear on election day about long lines, delay in voting, voting machines not loaded up right, ballots. No, it's in both.
In Republican states.
We just had it over in Maryland.
I invite you to come to me to Virginia, where the Republican governor last year had people in Norfolk, where I was last election day on 2012. Yeah, I mean the voting. I mean you don't have that in the white areas.
I have that in Maryland. I live in a black area. I live in Prince George's County.
But Virginia.
I went over to Oxon Hill to try to vote. The line was around the corner. 4 voting machines. The poll opened late.
I'm talking battleground states: Ohio, Virginia, Florida. Ohio, Virginia, Florida. Let's look at the lines.
What makes my vote any less because I live in a blue state than a battleground state?
I'm saying it makes it less. I'm saying Republicans control it. Republicans control a lot of these situations.
Here's one of the fundamental issues. There's a difference to me between, first of all, having 4 voting machines is a joke.
Right.
Yes, it is.
But what I'm speaking of, though, are clear and deliberate attempts to, one, cut voting days. In Georgia, they tried to cut early voting almost to 6 days or so. Luckily, that bill didn't pass. You have the voter ID laws, which they cannot defend, but you also have, which makes no sense to me, again, a clear and deliberate attempt to stop souls to the polls.
Right.
To outlaw voting on Sundays is specifically targeting African Americans.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Which, by the way, only Republicans do. You can't name a Democratic legislature or governor who has done what Roland just described. You can't name one because there isn't one.
No, excuse me. When it comes down to voting, let's put this in a perspective. It's no Democrat, it's no Republican. Wrong is wrong. I hate to hear people say two of the lesser evils. Evil is still evil.
No, I'm just pointing out the facts.
Wrong is wrong.
Wrong is wrong. Evil is evil.
But when you look at what has taken place since 2010, this effort to upend our voting procedures has largely been led by Republicans across the country. State legislatures all across the country.
Name a Democrat.
89.
Name a Democrat.
One second. Go, Michelle.
89 efforts in 33 states to limit or to minimize the opportunity to vote, especially in states where we specifically have a majority.
That's where we are. So, but for African Americans, what I want us to understand, that means for us to blow the polls out. That means to say, even if you put every single obstacle in our way, we're still going to vote. And I say, penalize the people who are trying to block you. We know exactly who they are, and say, we're not going to put you back in office, whether you're a Secretary of State or an Attorney General, whether you're a state rep or state senator or governor or United States senator or member of Congress. And that's exactly what's going on here. And the key for us to understand is that there's no excuse not to vote. And here's the other piece. Voting is not the solution to our problems. It's a solution. But if you're sitting here watching this show and listening and you're concerned about what's happening in this country and then you don't vote, I'm real clear. Shut the hell up.
Right.
Because you had a moment to change stuff and you actually didn't.
And then the ball is queued up for African American voters in this cycle. Because you've got some states with over 20% population. So we got to look at Georgia and North Carolina. Let me tell you, if Kay Hagan loses, then all that stuff, that drama we saw with those demonstrations doesn't mean a thing.
But we also got to see in Arkansas where black voters in 2012 were in the bottom when it came to turnout. So black folks in Arkansas, y'all got to get off your butts and go vote as well. When we come back, we're going to